Hi. Well, I still carry a notebook. I have an iPad, an iPhone, a Mac Air, but I still carry a notebook. Does anyone carry a notebook anymore? I don't know. Oh, a few people. Good, good. We're all old-fashioned together. And I have stacks of these notebooks throughout my life. And I know my daughter will curse me when I die because she's going to have to be the one to figure out if any of them are kept and clean them out, throw them out, whatever. But they're my notes on my life. And it's odd for me because as I look back in my notebooks, there's one question that appears over and over again. And the question is this: who cares about this place? And I found myself writing that question again last Wednesday. I was in New York for a panel on the arts. And the theme of this panel was fresh angle on the arts. And the panelists were from around the world. It seems that a fresh angle on the arts comes from Cairo and Nairobi and London, Santiago, of course, New York, but not Grand Rapids, and not a city like Grand Rapids, because Grand Rapids, it seems, is old news, small news, local news. And I don't say this so much as a critic, but really as someone simply reflecting reality. Because in an age of globalization, business mergers and acquisitions and consolidations, the growth of social networks, global tribes, the idea that a city still matters seems almost quaint. But globalization is not the only pressure on the local and why local matters. The pressure also comes from the power of the narrative. You know this narrative that the real America resides in small towns and leafy glens that are full of white picket fences with Leave It to Beaver families inside the white picket fence with mom, dad, and 2.3 kids. That's where real America resides. And that narrative is so powerful. It's so hardwired into what we think about ourselves and about our nation that it really makes it difficult to see the changing reality that is underway in our communities, and it marginalizes anyone who's not living the Leave It to Beaver lifestyle. But for anyone who wants to see it, what's going on in the U.S. today is more than apparent. And the latest look at migration patterns of 25 to 34-year-olds, the next generation, and particularly those who are college educated, is especially revealing. What's happened over the last 4 decades is that there's been this steady increase in the number of young people, young adults, who are moving into the center of cities. Think about it this way. It's the CBD, the Central Business District, the downtown, and the 3-mile radius of neighborhoods that surround downtown. We'll call that the close-in city. And if you compare what's happening today with young adults, 25 to 34-year-olds, they are today 42% more likely than other Americans to live in those close-in neighborhoods. But if you look at what's happening with college-educated 25 to 34-year-olds, it's sort of off the charts difference, because what's happening today is that they are more than twice as likely as other Americans to live in that CBD and 3-mile radius. So this is no longer some anecdote or it's the one-day story on the cover of USA Today. This is a 4-decade trend that keeps accelerating. If you look at the top 51 metro areas in America, the metro areas with 1 million or more people, there are only 16 cities where the central city and the close-in neighborhoods are not outperforming the metro area in terms of the growth rate of 25 to 34-year-olds. Now think about that. So only 16 of the top 51 where that close-in neighborhood is not outperforming the metro area. In fact, even in Detroit, even in Cleveland, metro areas that are losing college-educated 25 to 34-year-olds, they're actually gaining those individuals, that demographic, in their close-in neighborhoods. Pretty remarkable. 85% of millennials today say they prefer urban living, and if you look at what's actually happening, they're acting in a big way on their preferences. Now, so they're moving to the central city, to the close-in neighborhoods. And if you think about why, if you think about what that preference represents, what's generally attractive about downtown and close-in neighborhoods, it's that they're compact, mixed-use, walkable neighborhoods. They typically have an abundance of local businesses. They typically have art, culture, entertainment that's there. And frequently now there's some sort of being rediscovered natural amenity that is close by. And all of that, I think, is the search for vibrancy. Mostly what young adults are looking for is vibrancy. I think, in fact, vibrancy may be our best proxy for quality of place. If you think, I was walking back last night to the hotel, and I was noticing how many people were out enjoying the outdoor cafes and sitting on the benches and sitting in the park at the museum. And, which restaurant do you go into? You don't go into the empty restaurant. You go into the restaurant that's crowded, right? Because you figure people are there, that's where I want to be. That's all about vibrancy. A few years ago, I had an opportunity to do about 50 focus groups around the country with college-educated 25 to 34-year-olds, and they were recent movers. They had all moved within the last 24 months. And I remember very distinctly, we were trying to find out what it was they liked about what drew them to those places they had moved to? Why did they make that decision to move to those places? And I remember one young man in Richmond, Virginia, very, very clearly saying to me, I just want to be able to stumble onto the fun. And I thought, you know what? That's probably as close to a perfect development principle as we will ever get. You need to make it possible for people to stumble onto the fun, stumble onto the people, stumble onto the ideas, stumble onto the opportunities. In other words, to make the happy accidents more likely. Although the image of the white picket fence is hardwired into American politics, it is grossly out of step with the choices that young people are making today. And now that we know that wages and productivity and entrepreneurship increase with density, we can no longer treat urban living as some alternative lifestyle, something that's really odd and strange. And let me just make a point, too. I think this is important. The qualities that young adults are seeking in cities and in their lives, in urban living, is not just desired by young adults. We did a study at CEOs for Cities where we looked at how people were valuing homes. It turns out that average home buyers in America, not urban planners, not architects, not urban hipsters, like average American home buyers, are paying a premium today for homes that have higher than average walk scores. You know WalkScore, walkscore.com. It tells you how many destinations are within walking distance of where you live. People are willing to pay a premium for those houses today. And if they are in a neighborhood, in a city with good transit, they're actually willing to pay more of a premium. I have to apologize to Cheryl this morning from Ford for making this point, but it turns out that if there's actually an alternative to the car, to driving a car, transit's available, then people are willing to pay even more for the homes. And of course, dense, close-in, compact living is a pretty good defensive strategy against high gas prices. So, and then when you throw into that mix what's happening with teenagers today in America, which I find, from my vantage point, really odd. 16 to 17-year-olds getting their driver's license plunged. Vehicle miles traveled among young people plunged. It's like, what's going on today? So all of these trends are pointing to a growing market for compact, walkable, mixed-use neighborhoods where home and work and entertainment and school are all nearby. In other words, a market for something that is very local, very intimate, and very much about this place. Now, that's clearly the future. It's just not, as they say, evenly distributed. And it certainly hasn't penetrated the political psyche or the real America narrative. Have any of you read Ed Glazer, Harvard economist Ed Glazer's new book, The Triumph of the City? If you have not and you care about cities or you're interested to learn more, I highly recommend it. If you follow the logic in that book, it goes something like this. Here are the cliff notes to Triumph of the City. Cities, or dense collections of people, because that's what cities are, cities enable connections and creativity. Connections and creativity enable innovation. Innovation enables jobs growth. You see why this place matters? No matter where we live in America, we are all depending on the success of cities, including this city, including your city. And the quality of those places increasingly matters because we know that talented people make decisions about where they live based on where they want to live. All of our research points to it. Talented people are mobile. The more education they have, the more mobile they are. And two more important things for you to know. Talent attracts talent. Just like I said, people attract people. Talented people attract talented people. And it turns out, and this is really interesting, 58% of any city's success can be, if you count success as per capita income, any city's success, 58% of it can be explained by the percentage of college graduates in its population. And that's conservative, by the way. So yes, business will continue to get bigger, and social networks will continue to globalize, but we still live in real places, and real places still matter. So who will tend to the success of these places? Back to the original question in my notebook, who will care for this place? Well, anyone who explores the TED archives will find compelling stories of smart people attempting to crack some serious problem in Africa or India, in Egypt. I applaud that. But maybe there's just a little bit of hubris attached to this idea that we can solve problems on the other side of the world, but be disengaged with our own communities. So I hope that you will engage with the world and that you will also care about this place or the place you live. That you will engage as the organizers of TEDx Grand Rapids have engaged with their community. That you will become the makers and shapers of your cities with your art and your ideas and your entrepreneurial zeal. That you will practice civics because the place you live is not now and never will be just a small idea. Thank you.